Hello, everybody. So I am back now with the revival of the in-depth guide series. I have taken some feedback and I have determined that I'm going to be changing this series to instead going fully in-depth to a whole bunch of tems. I'm just going to give you guys a couple different builds, explain some of the options that each tem has, explain some of their good partners and some of their worst counters. And I think that should cover quite a bit for each tem. It should be helpful for you guys. And if you guys have any further questions, you can ask. I also am going to combine 10 of these into one video at a time. Probably not going to post them real often. Be nice to get one out once every couple weeks, but we'll see how it goes. So these are going to be the first 10 tems in the game in tempedia order, outside of chromeon, because that one deserves a video in itself, and that's not today. I'm going to be going through Mimit second because I think it'll be easier once I go through Zian first. I should have timestamps in the comments, like a pinned comment. If you're one of the first ones to watch this before I can get the timestamps there, sorry, but I'll add them soon. Alright, we'll get into it. So first off is Zian. Zian's best trait is Attack T. It changes into the type of whatever move it uses, kind of like Protean from Pokemon, except it will always keep the digital typing. It just gains a secondary typing. Wastewater and Electropunch are good because they both... Wastewater hits water types. Electropunch hits digital types, two of Zian's weaknesses. Turbine and Cyberclaw are the last two moves I chose, but Zian has one of the most flexible movesets in the entire game. I like these two because it gives you some extra coverage, and you'll always have priority after the first turn. Other common options are Crystal Bite if you're on a digital heavy team and want to counter electrics as well as the waters and digitals. Telekinetic Shrapnel if you want... Telekinetic is common if you're not running a digital core in place of Electropunch, just to have another turn 1 option outside of Wastewater. It's also a good option to hit Earths and Crystals. Frond Whip, you really don't see, neither do you see Turbo Attack real often. Mechanical Heat's kind of a joke, and the other moves really aren't great. So I would say Crystal Bite and Telekinetic are the other two moves you could slot in. You can have them in place of either Turbine or Cyberclaw, but usually it's in place of Electropunch if you don't have Digis, because Electropunch without Synergy feels really bad. As for the build, I have... So, Zian, hitting 221 speed is pretty good. You're able to outspeed Oshiara with a Synergy Electropunch, which is about all you can ask for. But it also is a good breakpoint to reach for your other priority moves. The little bit of stamina invest just helps you with any 3-turn rotation you want. And then the HP is just maxed with an attack fill because Zian has naturally high attack, and in the current meta, bulk is much more favored to attack. You're most likely going to be 3-shotting things anyways, unless you have type advantage, in which case it's still like a 2-shot. So you can kind of sack on attack a little bit, and you'll notice that kind of throughout with my spreads, that for the most part I'll opt for bulk over damage. So that's just what I did here, and this is the spread we end up with. For anyone who's wondering about a Voltaic Charge Zian, Voltaic Charge is awful, but I know that people are like, well, I want to try it anyways, so here you are. You don't get stab on your other moves now, so you're going to want to just use digital moves. However, Zian doesn't really have a turn 1 digital move. So your turn 1, you're more than likely going to heat up to get the attack boost so that you heal even more from the damage you deal. But if you need to deal some damage, I just put Wastewater because the Toxic Tick is nice if you were to ever face a bulkier team, or just to resist anyways. It's nice to have that little bit of true damage. Turbo Attack and Cyberclaw are your go-to stab options for the most damage that you can possibly deal. Cyberclaw giving priority is nice. As for the build, this one, like I said, it's kind of a meme build, and I've never run this, so I can't say for sure, but you max out attack to get as much healing as possible, and then instead of investing in HP, I actually invested in defenses, because the idea is the less HP you have, the more value the amount you heal back is worth. You could maybe put some speed in here. 167 speed isn't bad. It outspeeds stuff like base Adoro and base Turok, now that you see anything at base speed real often. Maybe Adoro, I guess. So you don't need to invest a whole lot, and you can save it for more defensive TVs. Double screen is just the item I went with. Zalbian's items overall are really flexible. You can do Taser on an Electro Punch build just to inflict burn. I've seen Drill before. Energy Drink. Overall, it's really flexible, but War Drum is just nice for physical attacks, and Double Screen's nice just to be a little bit bulkier. As for some good partners, we got Physical Mimit, because two Zalbians give each other Electro Punch synergy, and then they have really nice type coverage. Just hope you don't run into an Earth or a Crystal. So that's good. Gazuma, just because Zalbian's one of the better fast charge receivers. Even though fast charge got nerfed, it's still a nice little trait. Zalbian max speed reaches 265, which +1, or it reaches 267, but at 265 +1 speed, you can outspeed max speed Oshiara, which is a breakpoint that's very relevant in the current meta, and you would be able to smack it with a wastewater. Just don't expect it to kill, because Oshiaras are really tanky, and this build doesn't have max attack invest. This also doesn't reach that speed breakpoint. Just saying, it's an option for you on especially Digi-aggro teams. Other digitals are also a good pair for it, especially on the aggressive Digi teams, stuff like Munko and Chromeon. Just because Zalbian can cover the weaknesses Digi has pretty well. As for what Zalbian doesn't like to face, I'm going to try and keep these two picks for the current meta, but I want this video to maybe be used in other metas. The current patch is 1.5, but it shouldn't change much until like 1.6, the meta much, I wouldn't imagine. So Turok is just a common Earth type. You can hit it with Electro Punch, but 2 Electro Punches will not kill a Turok, and you're actually turning yourself into an electric type to be weak to it, to a Stone Ball if you were to do that. So Turok is not something you want to run into. It can also hit you super effective if you use Wastewater with a Feather Gatling. Inky is just something that will outspeed Zalbian and one-shot it with a Thunder Strike with Specmaster, and Zalbian doesn't really have anything to hit it. So that's it for Zalbian. On to the next Tem. We have Mimit, which I said I was going to skip over at first. So Mimit, I didn't make a landing build, because when you're playing Mimit, it's literally the most flexible Tem in the game, because it transforms into your other Tems. So what I wanted to do is explain how typically you would build a landing transmog Mimit. So normally with landing transmog, you're going to have Tems that you want to turn into, usually stuff with self-synergy. A couple examples: Nature Coish with Water Cutting Lily, Tuvine with Humiliating Slap, or Size Munch with Size Munch's Wreck. So, and even the Zalbian with the Electro Punch. Those are just a few examples. But you have those in mind that you want to play Mimit with. So let's say, go back to Zalbian here. Let's say you have Zalbian and Mimit, and your Mimit turns into Zalbian. What would be your optimal spread? Well, it would be this exact one that you have for your Zalbian. So you would probably want to reach these values when possible, like the specific breakpoints. So for here, I reached a speed and a stamina breakpoint. So I would want at least 7 or in 270 speed on my Mimit for TVs. Because all of Mimit's stats, I should have mentioned, all of the stats change into the stats that you turn into, except for like the TV investment. So like Zalbian has base 90 stamina. Well, Mimit gets base 90 stamina when it transforms. Stuff like that. But let's say for water or for Koish, I have a much higher investments. Like maybe I've got like 80 stamina investment for triple water cutting lily. I think it's more than that, but let's just use that as an example. Just in case I was to transform into Mimit instead of Zalbian, I would want to reach 80 stamina, so that it would give me a better option if I turn into the Koish. So what you basically want to do is you want to hit the highest value of the breakpoints that you have on your team. So if you have a higher stam breakpoint, you want to reach it. If you have a higher speed breakpoint, you want to reach it. If you have an HP breakpoint, you probably want to reach that as well. And usually what you're going to do is you're going to fill the offensive stat, whether it's attack or special attack. Not saying like you can't run a 500 speed, 500 special attack or attack Mimit, that would be okay. Just know that there, it's better as a slightly more balanced tem. It's very flexible. That's kind of like a rundown of landing Mimit. It's a bit hard to explain. It's something that you kind of need some more practice with. But essentially, you just want to copy the builds using the highest stats breakpoints that you have. If you had another tem on your team with 300 speed and your Zabian has 270, you just reach 300. And then you have like your higher stand breakpoint, whatever your HP breakpoint is, and fill the damage. I've also seen just some bulkier Mimits. A typical bulky Mimit build, if you were just being generic and not reaching breakpoints, it's probably just going to be this. You could switch around the HP and the attack too, but normally you opt for more stamina rather than less on a Mimit if you're not sure. Okay, that's enough of landing Mimit. Striking Mimit's a bit easier because you have no idea what you're going to transform into. You really don't. So, striking Mimit is typically something used as a counter, and you want to be bulky. So you're like, oh, well, my opponent has this, and I want to counter it with their own tem, so I bring striking Mimit. I also have seen a few high-ranking players, namely Senior Plat, use it with handcuffs and mom's lunch to trap an opponent in. Because DNA extraction is ultra prio, it will go before swaps. And with handcuffs on a mom's lunch tem, will actually trap them and prevent them from swapping. So there's some kind of fun strategies there. One of the best strategies I've seen used with striking Mimit. Other than that, so yeah, you want as much bulk as possible. So I have the max HP and then some defense invests. Stamina is just to make sure that you can stay on the board once you've transformed without having to swap out. And then the speed breakpoint. So when you use DNA extraction, you get... Okay, this is a bit old. You actually only get +1 speed. So what this speed invest does is if you transform into the fastest tem, being Amphitheater, this much invest allows you to outspeed an opponent's max speed Amphitheater. And it works for everything else too. You'll outspeed at least what you transformed into. So that's all the speed's for. So I didn't have any counters to Mimit because there really isn't any. I guess Tyrannac. Tyrannac would be a counter to Mimit because it prevents its trait from going off. Let's throw it out there. Tyrannac's a counter. But other than that, so like if you're going a physical Mimit on teams, stuff like Nature Quish, Two Vine, Move Flank, and Size Munch are good. Special Mimit is a bit harder to make work ever since Hellfire Cores got nerfed. But Electric Chromeon is one of the better special Mimits partners because it has self-synergy with harmful microwaves, electric synergy, and Synertyper Hyper bonus. So those are just some ideas. Okay, on to Molu, because like I said, I am skipping over chromeon. I would do those in a separate video at some point, probably. Molu is pretty basic. It's just a slow, bulky attacker that's pure digi. Doesn't have a whole lot of variety in moves, but it has just about everything you would actually want to click, which is nice. Most typical Molu build is with the trait Splitter, which prevents it from receiving secondary status effects from attacks, so you won't get burned from Fiery Soul, you won't get poisoned from Toxic Ink, stuff like that. But Mom's Lunch and Hypnotist, stuff from traits and gears, do go through the trait, just to warn you. But overall, it's still pretty high value as a trait. On top of just preventing them, it also gives you Invigorize for 2 turns. Super nice. Reactive Vial, with Molu's insane natural bulk, allows it to take a super effective hit, and then like another neutral hit or 2 even. Super strong item, allows Molu to just stay on the board with tems it normally wouldn't want to much better than it normally can. As for its moveset, Faraday Cage, Turbo Attack, and Cyberclaw are probably going to be on every Molu set you ever see. Cyberclaw is just for priority and for a slightly cheaper stamina option. Faraday Cage is just your turn 1 strong physical digi move. It also has really nice synergy with Toxics to apply Toxic Ticks for extra damage. Turbo Attack's just for your stronger nuke option. 130 base power. And then Splitter, the utility move you will normally go for is Cage, just because it procs your own Splitter, giving you Invigorize for a 3-turn move rotation, and also traps your opponents in, which can be super valuable, especially if you bring Molu in on a swap, and then trap your opponents to prevent them from swapping into like a water, electric, or digi that would end up hurting Molu bad. As for the spread here, TVs, 7 speed is just how it's speed 221 tems with Cyberclaw. Not often you'll need to do that, but 221 is the common breakpoint for most tems to reach, and it also prevents you from speed tying other Molgus for the most part, which is really nice. Just a little bonus to have. So the stamina is a bit low. You can invest more stamina and take some more out of attack. I opted for lower stamina because you do get Invigorized from your trait. So the rotation you probably want to use is Faraday Cage, normal Cage into either Turbo Attack or another Faraday Cage. And that would not overexert you because of the Invigorized. But that won't always be the rotation you want to click. You could end up wanting to click 3 attack moves. You would just have to OX then. So up to you if you want to invest more stamina. Molu doesn't have great stamina, so it would be pretty expensive to invest further. With that kind of idea in mind, there is an alternative build. This is what I personally run. Just figured I'd leave that for you guys in case you want that too. This is just, I have the other trait picked here. I like Sentinel just because it prevents sleep with the ally, and if you swap it in when your ally is sleeping, it will wake them up. Super nice to prevent sleep teams. And for the gear, I have Adrenaline Shot. And for my utility route move, I have Rush. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to have a 3-turn rotation. You'll take a lot of OX, but like if you wanted a Faraday Cage, Turbo Attack Faraday Cage, you would still be able to attack because of the Adrenaline Shot. But also it allows you to have Rush in your rotation. So you can click this as a priority move and still move afterwards. Because so many things live on such little health, and having Rush is very nice to have. I mean, Mogo has other utility moves too. You probably won't want to click Plasma Beam, but it does offer a burn support. Hologram, if you were going a faster Molgu, is kind of nice to avoid attacks. Digi-Threat, if you were throwing Molgu on a stall team, though I wouldn't recommend it, is an option. I wouldn't really run Firewall. It's still a bit underpowered, and the immunity actually would block your Invigorize from Splitter. Blue Screen's a really good move if you can get it off. It's just getting it off is pretty tough. And Auto Destruction is really fun as well. Just as a last chance, like, oh, your ally is probably already dead, you can get some extra damage off. But in general, you're probably going to be wanting to be running one of these 2 sets. As for partners, so the best partners are Mashuk and kind of Nox, which is just worse Mashuk. So it's a really good partner for Mashuk because Mashuk can use Perfect Jab to lower the defense of the target, and then Mogu can hit them with a Synergy Faraday Cage with their lowered defense, which will hurt really bad because you cannot resist Faraday Cage, and it'll also apply the Toxic Ticks just for even further damage. It'll one-shot most things that are super effective against that little combo there, and if not, the Toxic Ticks should finish it off. So that's why it's such a nice combo. But you are stacking a digital weakness, which isn't always the best. Noxlotl kind of does the same thing. It's a stare into a Synergy Faraday Cage. Nox also offers Hypnosis support and Turbo Choreography if needed. So if you wanted your Molgu to be a little bit faster and maybe you wanted to run one of those moves like Blue Screen or Plasma Beam that gets more value if you're faster, you could run Turbo with Nox and have it as a partner for Molgu. Just an option. As for Molgu counters, Nesla, both of its stabs hit Molgu. Like, you don't really want to be on the same board as a Nesla, and you're not going to one-shot a Nesla, but it will threaten you really bad. Oshiara, if you get hit with a Serbatios, it's going to do enough damage that even after your Reactive Vial procs, the move coming after with the +2 will knock you out. And Oshiara is really common. Other water types and electrics still aren't great matchups for Molgu, but it does fare a little bit better into some of them. The next tem, we have Platymus. So Platymus is currently probably the best tem in the game. It has just about everything it could possibly want. It's got a crazy good defensive typing, or it's got 3 resists and only 2 weaknesses. It's very fast, relatively bulky, at least on the special side, and it's got insanely high special attack, priority, evasion, spread, turn 1 options for both of its stabs. Platymus is just really good. I've kind of talked about it in a lot of my other videos. So this defensive invest HP defense allows you to live a turbine from Turok. The stamina allows you to hit 61. So with Sweatband you can just stay on the field for a long time. Speed allows you to outspeed max speed Nesla with your Toxin Shower or your Rotten Goo. It just allows you to outspeed max speed Nesla, which is a nice breakpoint to hit. And then the special attack is just fill, but it's still quite a bit of special attack, so it's nice. I skipped over it, but the trait, I go for Determined. Now with Hypnotist gone, Zen gets much less value. You would have to swap it into a sleep because most people aren't going to risk sleeping a Platymus unless they know what trait it already is. But Determined gives a lot of value because Tesla Prison is a common move people would use to weaken Platymus by slowing it down. Doesn't work. If Platymus gets hit by Perfect Jab, doesn't work. So you get a lot of value from Determined, certainly more than Zen. So this was kind of like a faster variation. You could even go faster, but I think this is just a good general spread to use. But if you did want to go a bit bulkier, you'd probably run something closer to this. Moveset's the same. Gear, I swapped out for double screen and invested more stamina, so you have some more staying power because you're going to be bulkier. HP and defense, just you have a bit more bulk. 221 allows you to outspeed max speed Oshiara with Rotten Goo, just so you have some threaten offensive. You're still threatening offensively. All right, and just fill special attack, a little bit less special attack because you're opting for more bulk. I've seen some people in place of Rotten Goo, because Rotten Goo without synergy feels bad. If you don't have electrics, you might not even want to run the move. So in that case, I've seen people run Toxic Slime, just because it's 80 base power and it applies a tick of poison. Kind of nice for chip damage. And Platymus is got 56 base attack. It's not good, but it's not completely awful. I've also seen Urushiol, because Platymus is already really nice on Toxic Cores, because when you use Toxin Shower, you're not really hurting a poison ally. And with Urushiol synergy, you get 4 turns of Toxic, which is crazy good. So that's kind of an option. Especially on the bulkier set, you might get a little bit more value. As I was saying, for partners, Platymus is really nice on Toxic Cores. So Gunder is really nice. I'll touch on Gunder later because it's one of the other first 10 Tems in the game. But Paralyzing Poison synergy, in short, is nice. Also provides Rotten Goose synergy. Gunder has Paralyzing Poison synergy, but offers Rotten Goose synergy to Platymus, yeah. And Hazrat gets Lava Wave synergy from Platymus, and once again, it's just Platymus is really nice on Toxic Cores in generally. As far as weaknesses, it's basically all Toxics because Platymus cannot hit Toxics, but Volarend is even worse because Platymus can't hit it, and it can hit it back super effective. Same thing with Gunder. Both these temps also have really high special defense stats, which Platymus is a special attacker and cannot really hit. Should about cover it. The next tem we have Laali. So I haven't played Laali in a little while, but Botanist is just your better offensive trait. 15% damage on the attacks you're going to click anyways is always really nice. Gear, Handcuffs offers even further utility with Plague, but you don't always need it because Resin Trap also traps, so you can get away with other items. Stuff like Fake Beard and Bait are nice. Bait prevents burn and toxic ticks, which Laali doesn't, or will probably get hit with fairly commonly. And Fake Beard just allows Laali to stay on the board a little bit longer with all of its extremely high stamina cost moves. Plague, Hypoxia, and Resin Trap are pretty much going to be your go-tos on an offensive Laali. Last slot's a little bit flexible. Turbo Choreography allows you to double as a support for wins, or just kind of be a speed control support in general. Other options are allergic spread. If you're just going a full offensive or you don't really need the speed, I would say this is your best option for a fourth offensive move because 20 stamina for an 80 damage spread that's boosted by Botanist, crazy good damage. It's really great value. Your other option would probably just be Gust. If you have some electrics and really want a second wind prio, or just a wind prio option in general, you could, but overall its damage is very weak. I can't really recommend it, but the option's there. As for the spread, it's just reaching 232, common breakpoint. You could go a little bit lower. 221 is the more relevant breakpoint, but reaching 232 is always nice, especially on a tem that likes to be faster, such as Laali. The faster you can get a turbo choreography off as well, the faster you get the speed on tempo. Stamina rotation is just for triple hypoxia. I think I actually might have miscalculated this, so forgive me. I did. It's 84. So let me just fix that real quick. But problem solved. 84 stamina for triple hypoxia if you were to click that. And then I just max special attack and through the rest in HP. Laali recently received some buffs to HP and defense, so it should be able to live just about any one attack from a fire or toxic physical attacker, stuff like Hazarat, Wastewater, and Lava Wave. Or even a less common Quetzaleno from a Kapire or even Riken. So Laali also got its trait reworked. Its secondary trait, backhanded. So now it applies 1 tick of regen whenever Laali uses a status move. Laali doesn't have a lot of status moves. The best ones are probably Tenderness, Bark Shield, and Turbo Choreography. However, it does have stuff like Nimble, which I've seen used with Kaleidoscope, which is kind of fun because you can heal something while also increasing its speed. But at that point, your Laali is almost completely useless besides doing that one thing. So it's kind of a rough trade-off. But if you really think you can carry with one tem after it gets a little bit of a speed boost, it might be worth it. But in general, this kind of Laali would more be used in a stall fashion. That's how I tried it, kind of on a stamina stall team. However, it didn't even feel that great there. But I want to have the option there in case you guys would be interested. Essentially, you put a lot in HP, a lot in special defense, and then you want as much stamina as possible to stay on the field a while. And then both Tenderness lowers attack and Bark Shield raises defense, so you're really punishing to physical attackers, which is why I invested so much in special defense, because hopefully you can make up for the lack of defense with your debuffs and buffs. Plague and Epoxy are just so you can hit stuff super effective, but know that they won't deal much damage if you're not investing in your special attack. I went for Tukma Mask as the item because you're going to be facing Toxics, and they have toxic ticks on most things. Being able to not take that tick for 12.5% true damage when you're bulky anyways is valuable. As for good partners for Laali, I would say Yowler's a good one because of Late Torment. So Yowler with an offensive moveset, Late Torment, Comebacker, and high offensive invest paired with Laali trapping things with handcuffs and resin trap. It's pretty strong. It really hurts just about anything you want turn 1. It can't be ignored, so I would say that's a good partner. There's other Evenks also learns Late Torment, but generally Yowler does the job better. Mashuk is also a decent option because Tireless Mashuk likes having partners that can use Turbo Choreography, and Mashuk can also use the move. Having Winds to synergize with offensively is nice. So Laali is just an option for that at least. And as far as Laali counters, Tolkien's pretty bad. Super common, resists both of Laali's stabs and hits it back really hard. And then I put Adoro on here. Toxic matchup with Laali is kind of interesting because Laali can hit them super effective, but they can also hit Laali super effective. The thing with Adoro is it commonly carries a reactive vial. If you were to Hypoxia and Adoro with its insane special defense stat, you might do like 30-40%. Then it heals 8% with reactive vial, and then your next epoxy is doing like 20%. So it just kind of sucks, and it's getting toxic ticks on you and hitting you with a V-Gust. So I would say Adoro is more of a counter to Laali than Laali counters Adoro. And also Adoro is really common still, so. And then it lowers your special attack with Denigrate, and it's just awful. So that covers Laali for the most part. On to the next one. We got Tataro. So I covered Tataro before in an in-depth guide, so I'm going to kind of go quicker over this one. The guide, I actually just stole all the builds from it. I would almost recommend you guys watch that one if you want a more in-depth guide for Tataro. But essentially, Tataro is pretty flexible. It's got a really wide moveset, but it only does a couple things well. One of those things, and the most common Tataro you're going to see, is as a turbo support. It has extra energy slams, a turn 1 stab option. Turbo is your support option. Major slash and Hellhanger just to hit hard. Soft touch is because most of the time you're going to be pairing your Tataro with Grandpa to receive the turbo choreography, and Grandpa can hypnosis, and you can hit stuff through sleep with a damage boost with soft touch. First aid kits just so you get more value from your bulk with your Tataro. The spread HP is just maxed because you're going to be wanting to take a lot of hits. Stamina's for the 3-turn rotation. Speed is after a synergy turbo choreography, you will outspeed 232s, or you'll outspeed max speed Amphitheater, I believe. If not, it was max speed Oshiara. Either one, it's a really great breakpoint to hit, and it's not too much speed invest, so it's perfectly reasonable. Rest and attack, just so you can hit stuff hard. This is more, so this Tataro here, oh, I forgot to do the, Shween's a good partner. Yeah, so this is for the Shween and Tataro combo with Rage, because Shween's trait Guardian prevents drops from defense, so you can have Rage and it will prevent the defense drop, and you'll get +4 attack. And Tataro is super bulky, and it's a pain to deal with. You can also buff up Tataro's defenses with Fluid Barrier and Quartz Shield from Shween, so that's why I have Defense Invest and HP, because you want Tataro to stay on the field and do as much as possible. After a Fluid Barrier, you want your special defense is good, and you just want a little bit more defense. And then the attack, you don't need max attack because you're buffing it with Rage, but having some is good. I don't have a turn 1 offensive move, so if your Shween gets banned or you're in a situation where you don't want to Rage, you'll actually want to swap Tataro in rather than have it in initially. But once it gets the holds off, it'll be able to alternate between Major Slash and Bestial Charge and hit with Held Anger whenever it's needed. You could swap Held Anger for Extra Energy Slam, though, if you want to turn 1. Once again, Soft Touch here. I think Soft Touch is generally a good trait. You could swap it for Resilient here, because if you don't have enough sleep options. Shween previously had Crystal Deluge, which would put Tems to sleep. So Soft Touch may have been better before. Resilient is definitely an option. It's just Resilient's kind of a rare trait. You're not going to want to use often. Nutrition bar is just for a bit of extra healing. You can just go First Aid Kit or Resistance Badge for more healing or damage if you prefer. Here's just kind of a Bruiser Tataro build. Tataro has generally really strong stats, really great defensive stats, HP defenses, and decent attack stat. So you can just throw some damaging moves on it. Extra Energy Slam, Major Slash. Gets some coverage with Nox Bomb, which is really nice. It's one of the better counters to Tyrant Act this way. It's not a Toxic. But I mean, honestly, Toxics do the job better than Tataro ever could. So you're probably not using Tataro all that much right now for Nox Bomb, but it at least has a niche over other neutrals if you want Toxic coverage. And then Perfect Jab's also nice just to lower defense of your opponents. So if you wanted to predict a swap and just throw a Perfect Jab and hit him with a really hard Major Slash the next turn, the option's there. Otherwise, it can provide support to slower physical threats. That's kind of why I also have Tyrannak on here. Tyrannack's a slow Tem that receives P-Jab really well, and it also, with Intimidator, prevents traits and Tataro doesn't really care about either of its traits. Resilient will proc sometimes, and it'll be really awesome when it does, but it's not consistent. It's like most of the time you're playing Tataro as if it didn't have any trait. I already went through it, but Tataro's best partner is probably Grandpa, just for the turbo receiver and synergy with Hypnosis and Soft Touch. Both of them are bulky monotypes, so they're able to be on a lot of boards. Just gotta avoid mentals and electrics. Tyrannak I just covered, and Shmeen I also covered. Just Tataro doesn't have any really great partners. It's kind of just a general all-rounder, something you can splash in on almost any team you would appreciate a neutral bruiser. Kind of does the job a little bit subpar in my opinion right now, but the option is there. And it's not like it's bad. Like a major slash with a res badge, it hurts really bad. So, yeah. And then I didn't put the counters on here just because, like, you're going to get walled by mentals. That's just how it is. You're a neutral type. They hit you hard. You don't like them. Sandby's probably the worst because dozing hit can put you to sleep. That's it for Tataro. Now on to Gunder. So Gunder is one of the strongest tems right now. Toxic in general is super strong, but on top of it, Gunder is able to be a toxic that resists wind types with thick skin. In general, Gunder is really slow, so energy drink is a good option just to prevent it from being controlled with sleep, which is fairly common. Also, it helps because one of the types that Gunder can hit super effective with its electric moves is mental, and mentals have a lot of sleep, so it's just another really good item for that reason. Moveset, I always prefer Nox Bomb over Wastewater because you're getting 10 more base power at 9 less stamina, and the only difference is that you're losing out on a poison tick. I really have a hard time ever justifying Wastewater on Gunder, so I would always run Nox Bomb personally. Defibrillate gives it an electric move that it can have before turn 3. Paizo is just a harder hitting electric move, just for after you've used Defibrillate, or just to hit if you got like an Earth Synergy or just want some priority. Paizo is just a really good move overall. Fourth slot is pretty flexible on Gunder. Gunder used to have more options. Used to have Clay Ball, which is commonly run, but it lost that. I put Beef Up on here just because it's able to raise its attack, which is really good at punishing swaps or buffing an ally, whichever you want to do. But it also has coverage if you wanted to run Water Jet, so you can hit Earth types, which would normally wall it. It has Paralyzing Poison, which is a crazy strong move, lowers your opponent's attack and special attack 2 stages, as well as poisons them. And with Synergy, it poisons them for 6 turns, which is like 75% of their health or something. That's not exact, but it's around there. So yeah, Gunder has a lot of cool options. As far as the build goes, I put a little bit of speed in it. Once again, this is the same breakpoint as I had from Molu. At priority outspeed space 221s. So the most common situation you'd run into there is Tulkin commonly ran 221 if it was using Fire Tornado to try and deal as much damage as possible to your Gunder. You could hit it with a Paizo before then. 61 stamina allows to have a 3-turn rotation. Just because Gunder has really cheap moves with Nox Bomb and Defibrillate, even Beef Up, so you don't need to invest any more stamina than that. HP and defense are just to kind of balance out its defenses a little bit and still give it some general bulk with HP. It already has insane special defense, one of the higher ones in the game, and then a kind of lower defense, so that's why we have some points in there, essentially. For anyone who likes running the more niche formation Gunder, this set's a bit strange. It's mainly, like, you can stack up your defenses extremely quick because you can Formation, which is just rest turn 1, get +2 defense, get to hold off a Shelter, and then use Shelter turn 2, which gives you +4 to both defenses. So within 2 turns, you could be +6 defense and +4 special defense, and you'll just be a pain to deal with. But also at the same time, you could just do Brumation, and then you can get a hold off of Paralyzing Poison, which is that awesome move that I mentioned earlier. Getting that off sooner can be valuable. Also, being able to piezo turn 2 is nice. If you're going information set, you probably don't need to run defibrillate because it's a weaker move, and you can just rest and get defib off hold anyways. If you weren't running paralyzing poison though, you could run beef up because if you're just stacking your defense with information shelter, you may appreciate being able to scale your offense as well. Because even if you can become an impenetrable wall, if you're dealing 10% damage to your opponent for the entire game, they're still going to win. So that's why beef up might be nice. As for the build, I just have max HP, similar defense invest. You can invest some more in there. It's just you want it to be bulky. Still 61 stamina is fine. You'll be resting a lot, and I have matcha as the item. But you could swap that to bait or even energy drink still. Both get good value. Even nutrition bar or first aid kit if you want some healing. And then the attack is just to make sure you don't hit like a wet noodle, because if you don't have the attack and you weren't running beef up, you would not be threatening at all. You would just be ignored, and then in the late game your opponent would try and bring an earth or a crystal, because both of which, while they hit Gunder super effective, and Gunder just can't even hit them. They both resist both of its stabs, so very interesting. As far as partners, so Gunder, Nidrasil is one of his better partners, because Nidrasil can use the spores to heal Gunder, which normally doesn't have any sort of healing on its own, but has really good defenses and appreciates the heals. And it also gives it synergy for paralyzing poison if you are running that move, because you can get the 6 turns of poison instead of just the 3. And then Acronox is another one. Gunder kind of also really good on toxic cores. I could have put Platymus on here too, but since Gunder was on Platymuses, I didn't double it up. But yeah, like I put them here. Like you're good. Like they're good together. Acronox is also nice because they can at least hit the crystals that Acronox is weak to, or hit the crystals that Gunder is weak to, with its Earth type coverage, and still provides synergy with paralyzing poison and such. As far as counters, basically any sort of crystal, a physical crystal or Earth. Gialis is one of the more common physical crystals. Chromeon also is, but you can hit Chromeon with Nox Bomb for at least effective damage, so you're not completely useless. Same with Tuvine. Tuvine's also common, but you can hit it with an electric moves neutrally. Gialis, you can't hit neutrally with either of your stabs, and it still hurts super bad, so watch out for it. Turok, kind of with Tuvine, you can hit it with electric moves, but it's still going to hit you really hard. Stoneball or Rockfall, so try to avoid it when possible. So the next one, we got Magmut. Magmut hasn't seen a lot of use in quite a few patches. I experimented with it. I still use it every once in a while. I think its better set is its physical set. Both its attack and special attack are even, so you can run either, but I think its physical options are just a bit better. In the current meta, I would recommend... Oh, I should have flipped these around. I recommend Spec Gulp right now. There's just more special threats in the meta than physical ones right now, so you'll get more value, but you're not... Both traits are just evenly good. You kind of pick whichever damage type is more common in the meta, and right now it's special. I like Nutrition Bar as the item. It's just even more healing on top of Spec Gulp. If you can heal 13% a turn, that's phenomenal. But always recommend it when you can do it. So this set right here, I'll just start with it anyways, is kind of more of a stall set. So if you're running a stall team and you want a special wall, what you can do is you can run Magmut here. You have Spec Gulp, so you heal every time they hit you with a special move. Magmut has Charcoal Wall, which raises its special defense by 4 stages in 1 turn, which is absolutely nuts, at high prio as well. So if anything's slow and trying to hit you with a special attack, it's probably just not going to do anything. It can scale itself offensively with Show Off, which is super valuable, and they can hit hard with Oshidashi and Meteor Swarm. For the spread, I just have max HP, split defenses, and stamina invest. You probably would want to invest some amount in attack. I'm not sure what that would be. Probably not more than 200. So you maybe just take like 100 out of each of these defenses, or maybe you even just don't put any in special defense, since you can kind of supplement your special defense with Charcoal Wall, and you just do the attack there. It is flexible and optional. It's just something you can kind of play around with, but want this to be a good starting point. As for if you were going for an offensive Magmut, this is more what I would run. I've run something very similar on my tag team core before. It's the same show-off Meteor Swarm Oshidashi. I put First Aid Kit here. I still think Nut Bar is the better item. You can't have two to the same Nut Bar with Temtem. You could have a stamina item if you wanted, but most of your stamina items are going to be taken by other Tems. But Fake Beard, Sweatband, good options as well. Bulk is so you could just have it all in HP. That'd be simple. But Magma gets slightly more value if you invest in defenses rather than just all in HP. That would take a whole video to explain it, but it just does, okay? The speed is to outspeed base speed roller. Not a common thing at all, but just in case. And to outspeed like speed ties, and you'll outspeed Gyarados, you'll outspeed any Tyrannac you should run into, and should be good. The stamina, just for a 3-turn rotation, in case you want to click Warm Cuddle over Show Off, but Warm Cuddle, Oshi, and Meteor Swarm. You'll want to click Show Off as soon as when you can to get Invigorized, so you can have like a 4-turn rotation by clicking Oshidashi, Meteor Swarm, and then whichever one again. Attack Invest is just kind of fill, but it is quite a bit. After a Show Off, your Oshidashi can one-shot stuff like just about anything. Is super effective against really. Turok, Volphy are probably going to be your two main ones. Don't expect Meteor Swarm to do a whole lot of damage. It's actually really weak. 85 base power sucks. Warm Cuddle's just for a turn 1 option. But it's nice to threaten Shimurians, so it's there. You could run a special set as well. You would probably run this same exact set, except flip the attack to special attack, and you would probably want Sensei Robe. And you would run, Soul Shout, Fiery Soul. That's kind of all you have for special options. You can run Magma Cannon for a slightly higher damage fire move, but that's not going to feel that great. And you could run Charcoal Wall just to kind of, or even Madness Buff if you really want to have a way to scale your special attack, but you don't like having to dig into your nice HP pool. But options there, just to let you know about it. As for good partners, Ninjasil is a great partner, especially for the stall variation, because what you can do is with Tri Apothecary, you can Side Spores your own Magmut to heal it with Spec Gulp, apply Regen, and Nut Bar. So even if your opponent has type advantage against your Magmut, if they can't kill it turn 1, you can essentially heal it like 50% just by hitting it with your own Ninjasil, so it's great. Otherwise, on the offensive set, I already said I use Magmut on my tag team core. It's a great partner for Tutsu. Gets a lot of value from the damage reduction. Yeah. As far as counters, Magmut has a really bad type chart. It's super good against 4 types and super bad against the other 4. Here's just probably 2 of the worst offenders. Because Saipat and Nagai's will resist both of your stabs, be faster than you, and hit you hard. So you probably don't want to be on the board against either of these, but you can take a hit and hit the ally back as long as they can't also hit you. One of the bigger problems with Magmut just existing is that one of the types it wants to hit, with being Earth, since it's a melee type, also hits it back super effective. So you kind of have a neutrally good matchup against Turok and Volphy. Stuff like Turok can't Stoneball you though, or can't Stoneball you before you hit it with an Oshidashi. So as long as you're not leading a Magmut into a Turok, or the Turok doesn't have its holds off, but you do, you should win that matchup potentially, but hard to say. Should be it for Magmut. On to the next one, we have Grandpa. Grandpa is very plain. Yeah, sorry to say, Grandpa fans out there. Once again, I did do a more in-depth guide, a whole separate video for Grandpa. It's a little bit outdated. It's definitely outdated because Grandpa got a new trait. Grandpa is just a very simple Tem. It's a monotype wind. The only time you really want to use Grandpa is if you want a Tem that can provide sleep and turbo synergy and is a wind type, essentially. It has this fun new trait called Bird Season, which increases the damage it deals to opposing wind types by 50%. Problem is, unless your opponent is Volarend or neutralized, it's not going to be all that much of a boost. It's only going to be 75% of the normal damage, so it's pretty rough. But in general, if you don't have enough statuses in your team to run Bully, Bird Season is going to be better just because people who swap into a resist will still take more damage. So if they swap in like their Turok to take a Tornado, they'll still take that 50% bonus damage. But if you have statuses, stuff like Plague or Binary Flood, Fiery Soul, I'd probably recommend running Bully just for the chance that you will get the 25% boost. But both traits are kind of interchangeable. Neither one's really better than the other. I'd say they're both equally unfortunate. Grandpa has awful stamina, one of the worst in the game. Its baby evolution, Pajaro, has the worst stamina in the game. So you're going to want a stamina item on Grandpa. With the Sweatband nerf, you're probably going to want Fake Beard as your option. Fake Beard allows you to run Hypoxia a lot more free to just hit stuff harder turn 1, which is nice. Yeah, that's kind of the general build as far as the TVs go. I just have 232 here. You could have a bit more, have a bit less. I think it's just a good spot to hit for a good amount of speed, and also being able to invest full HP, enough stamina for a 3-turn rotation with Fake Beard, and special attack to still be threatening offensively somewhat. Because like you could just take all this out of special attack and put it in speed, so your on-tempo choreog or turbos are faster, and your Hypno, even if you don't have turbos, nice. But I think in general you're gonna just appreciate having a balance of speed and special attack. And Grandpa having only one weakness gets so much value from its bulk, so I think you want a lot of HP if you can afford it. As far as partners, Tataro I already touched on is probably its best partner because it gets value. It's like they both synergize well with Turbo, and Grandpa can provide Hypno support for soft touch value with Tataro. Laali, just another turbo user and receiver, kind of nice combo. Laali's a bit more offensive if you're running a supportive Grandpa. Nox, another turbo Hypno user. So if you're running a turbo team, honestly Nox and Grandpa do fill very similar roles. It's just kind of what flavor would you like your turbo support to be, Toxic or Wind. But you could also run them both together. If you have a board where you're able to double sleep, you can get a free turbo off or a free swap into a turbo on anything you want, which could be valuable. Turok and Tuvine are two of the better turbo receivers in general because they're slower wind types that usually are investing in bulk. So if you can make them faster, they're high damage, high speed, and high bulk. So it's a really great value if you can get the turbo off. Problem is Turok has Stone Ball, so normally you want Gravel Bag, Soil Steam, but that's for another video. As far as counters go, I mean, Grandpa just doesn't like electric types. It kind of counters winds a little bit better than it used to, but it still loses against most winds because other winds have a secondary type. Like Tolkien can hit it with fire moves, and Grandpa's still weak to it, and best thing Grandpa can do is hit it with a slightly less resisted wind move with Bird Season. So that's kind of Grandpa's downfall. But it is nice as a turbo Hypno support. So if you want some fast Hypnos, Grandpa may be your go-to. That covers it for Grandpa. We're on to Amphitheater, which is the last Tem of this batch. So Amphitheater got a new trait, got settling this patch. So that's really awesome. But we'll start with a relaxed build, which is kind of like how Amphitheater has been up until this patch, and still is more often than not. So relaxed heals 15% whenever your opponent doesn't hit, if you don't receive any damage over the turn. And refreshing Diabolo is just an item because most of the time your opponents aren't going to attack Amphitheater because with relaxed and evasion spam, Amphitheater is just going to heal it right back. So you can almost always get Diabolo to proc on Amphitheater, plus it's filling a support role anyways. So it's a nice item to have. You could also try a new morale boosting whip on it, just to provide some stamina support if that's what you prefer as well. I have Tesla Prison because this Amphitheater is more of a support role. Being able to slow down your opponents is valuable. Bright Beam is just to create space for Relax to proc. And so you can heal a little bit back while also dealing chip damage. Sparks, not required. You could also run Intimidation here if you want another evasion option, some stamina control, or I guess doesn't really have any other great options. But Sparks provides some more stamina support if you're not running Morale Boosting Whip, and also buffs special attack of either itself or your ally. Can be valuable, but you're probably not going to click it real often. And Plague's just going to be your go-to nature option, nature stab. It's fast, like with priority. An Amphitheater using Plague is going to be like the fastest thing in the game for the most part. It provides exhaust value as well, so it's nice to have around, but it's really expensive stamina-wise, so probably don't want to click it too often. This build like fully goes into the support role that Amphitheater has. It's really not going to deal any damage. 66 special attacks, really nothing to brag about. But the speed control and stamina control and even potential scaling options that Amphitheater offers are pretty nice. Plus the heal threaten with the refreshing Diabolo. 331 allows it to outspeed max speed Oshiara. So if you can outspeed an Oshiara, hit it with a super effective Tesla Prison and slow it down, so anything that's on your team that's 265 speed or faster outspeeds it. Super nice. 81 stamina allows Amphitheater not to have to run a stamina item, which normally it would. So that can be nice. And Amphitheater loves staying on the field for a long time, so the more stamina, the better for it. HP is just fill, but this HP allows it to live just about anything any one hitter would want to. So your opponent would have to double in to kill it, otherwise Amphitheater is just going to heal it right back up with Relaxed. For settling, you would probably want a more offensive build. This is one I was running on my Sparks core, or at least it was very similar. So I opted for Tesla Prison here anyways, because I just think speed control is super valuable. But if you're going for more damage, Thunderstrike may be the better option. Your Plagues will actually deal damage. Bright Beam, just to create more space. And I have Intimidation on here just to bring up the thought. You could also run Sparks here. But if you're able to evade 2 turns and get a settling proc, it's basically the same thing as using a Sparks unless you're using it on your ally. So creating space for your settling to scale on Amphitheater is very nice to have. I have Sweatband on this one. I think it's Amphitheater's best item, but it's also useful on a lot of other Tems. So you may be fighting for that item slot. If you do run Sweatband, you probably want 73 stamina. Allows you to throw out 3 plagues without OXing. If you needed to, 140 speed, I guess I could go down to like 273. Let's see. I forgot what I used this spread for. 273 allows you to outspeed max speed Nestla, which can be nice. Nestla's probably not going to stay in against Amphitheater anyways, but it also outspeed max speed Chromeon, which is something you may actually run into. The HP invest allows it to live, I think, almost everything. Maybe not a Giala's Crystal Bite, but you have so much more special attack that scales really fast with settling that you'll be an offensive threat within a matter of turns. And even initially right out the bat, like 271's not bad, but it's not great either. And if you have lower damaging moves like Tesla Prison and Plague, don't expect to do too much. But you can't just ignore this Amphitheater. It's really interesting because with Relaxed Amphitheater, pretty much you're ignoring the thing for the entire time it's on the board because it's just not having enough offensive pressure. But Settling Amphitheater, you can't ignore it because it just constantly gains pressure with settling. So very interesting, kind of opposite play styles. I think it's really fun. Amphitheater is one of my new favorite Tems to play around with. And for third option, which I normally didn't have in some of the other builds, but Amphitheater can also run on stall. With Relaxed, it just has free healing in its trait. Shelter, it's basically you swap it in on a resist turn. You use Bright Beam to get evasion, and then you click Shelter. All of a sudden, you're +4/+4, healing damage, 15% of your max health, like every turn, unless you're getting hit. Double Screen just helps provide a little bit of damage resist. Tales of Prison and Plague are just your damage options. Stab. You could run one of them, or Intimidation over one of them, but I wouldn't recommend that. I've seen Agario beat an Amphitheater in an endgame because it had Tesla Prison instead of running Plague, so can't recommend not having both stabs. And then Tesla Prison's just your cheaper stamina option. You could run Thunderstrike, but I like having more stamina on my Amphitheater. You could also run Sparks if you wanted some damage scaling. That's also an option. Because in this build I don't have any special attack invests. I do have a lot of defensive and HP invests. As I've said with other builds, you could take these down to like 100 each. Yeah, I'm not going to, but yeah, you could take them down to like 100 each and have like 200 special attack, which would be at least nice something, so you deal a little bit more than 0 damage. I don't think you need any speed on a stall Amphitheater. You mainly just want stamina, which is like 81, so you can stay for a while, and then as much bulk as you can get. But I wouldn't really recommend running this Amphitheater. There's just better Tems that do its job better. But it is a self-raid boss with Shelter and Relax. It's able to buff both of its own defenses and heal. So it's kind of interesting as like a potential one-man game-winning machine. I don't know. The option's there. I just wanted to let you guys know about it. Amphitheater partners, I couldn't think of a whole lot of them. First one that comes to mind is Nature Chromeon, because it provides synergy for Harmful Microwaves and Sinner Typer, and you can also Sparks it. It's the combo that I was using, and it's really fun. It's just that you have to watch out for fire types, essentially. But other than that, it's really strong. Sure, there's other Amphitheater combos, but for the most part, Amphitheater is almost like it's able to function just on its own, but it does offer speed support, heal support, and damage support even. So, Exhaust, yeah. Overall, it's just a great support. Super flexible in what it can support, but I think Chromeon's one of the better ones. Stuff it doesn't like running into, definitely doesn't like Gunder. Resist both of its stabs, Gunder can hit is super effective. Pretty big problem for it. Less of an issue, but Raiken. You don't see Raiken very often, but it would be able to, if a Quetzaleno could potentially outspeed Amphitheater, get it down in range to potentially die to a rush. So you got to be really careful if you're daring to stare in front of a Raiken. Not all Raikens invest speed, but if you are running a slower Amphitheater, it could be something scary. And I mean like other fire types and toxics and whatever else as well. I mean, it's just got to watch out for your weaknesses. It's just Grunder's one of the more common ones. And Raiken with fire priority that hurts bad, and Rush to finish off. But alright, I think we got through everything. So that was a lot. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope that this format of doing this video is a lot easier to take in, and you guys can kind of just focus on which parts you want to listen to and ignore the ones that you don't. If anyone has any further feedback, let me know. I hope you guys use some of these builds. Keep in mind, they're all just like starting points. I tried to give a little bit more general builds and kind of explain things a bit more so that these can be used in multiple patches. I did say earlier, though, this is patch 1.5. I don't think a whole lot's going to change, at least until 1.6. And even then, I don't know if any of these Tems are going to be touched. A lot of them have been recently reworked, but we could see some nerfs and stuff like Gunder. But even so, it's probably just going to thrive mostly as like a bulky physical attacker and such. So its general game plan shouldn't change. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.